I never thought I'd have to choose between my wife and my son's life. But as I watched Sarah carefully removing Nathan's IV, while her father, Pastor David, blocked the doorway, I realized this nightmare was real. "Stop this right now, doctor," Martinez shouted, trying to push past my father-in-law's imposing frame. "You're endangering your child's life." Nathan's small hand gripped mine, his face pale and confused. The chemotherapy had taken his hair, but not his spirit, until now. I could see fear in his eyes as his mother, the woman who had spent every night by his hospital bed for the past 3 months, suddenly became a stranger. "Sarah, please," I begged, "think about what you're doing. The treatment is working. His numbers are improving." "The numbers are lies, Michael," she said, her voice eerily calm. "Dad showed me the truth. These chemicals are poisoning our baby. God's love is the only medicine he needs." I looked at Pastor David, the man who had opposed our marriage 8 years ago because I wasn't part of his congregation. He stood there in his black suit, clutching his worn Bible, a serene smile on his face that made my blood run cold. "The Lord spoke to me," he announced, his deep voice carrying the authority that had swayed hundreds of followers. "Last night, during prayer, he revealed that Nathan's healing lies not in man's medicine, but in divine intervention. 2 weeks ago, everything had been different. Nathan's doctors were optimistic. The aggressive chemotherapy was working, shrinking the tumor that had threatened to take my son's life. Sarah and I were united, taking shifts at the hospital, celebrating every small victory. Then Pastor David returned from his missionary trip. He started visiting daily, bringing his Bible and his influence. I noticed the changes in Sarah gradually enter, her questioning of the doctors, her increasing prayers over Nathan's medicine, her late-night phone calls with her father. "Your faith is weak, Michael," Pastor David had told me just yesterday. "You trust in man's science more than God's power." But Sarah understands. She's always understood. Now, as hospital security finally pushed through the door, Sarah had Nathan in her arms, backing toward the window. Pastor David's followers formed a human chain behind them. When had they arrived? How long had this been planned? "Mrs. Walker, put the child down," a security guard ordered, reaching for his radio. "You can't stop God's will," Sarah responded, her eyes wild with a fervor I'd never seen before. "Dad, tell them." Pastor David raised his Bible like a shield. "The Lord protects his chosen ones. Brother Marcus, Sister Elenev, the van is ready." 2 of his followers moved forward, creating a path to the door. "Doctor," Martinez was shouting about court orders and medical responsibility, but her words were drowned out by the hymn. Pastor David's people had started singing. "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." Nathan's face was getting paler, his grip on my hand weakening. The chemotherapy pump, now disconnected, beeped its warning into the chaos. "Daddy," he whispered, "I don't feel good. Why is Mommy doing this?" Before I could answer, Sarah pulled him away, into the protective circle of her father's followers. The singing grew louder, a wall of sound between me and my son. "If you do this," I called out to Sarah, my voice breaking, "if you take him out of treatment, you'll kill him. Is that what you want? To watch our son die?" She paused for a moment, and I saw a flicker of doubt cross her face. But then Pastor David placed his hand on her shoulder, and her expression hardened. "The only thing killing him is your lack of faith," she said. "Dad showed me the truth. These doctors, they're they're the real danger. God will heal Nathan, you'll see." As they moved toward the door, I reached for my phone with trembling hands, dialing 911. But I knew that by the time the police arrived, they would be gone. To Pastor David's compound, where he had been healing people for 20 years. The same compound, where 3 children had died last year from treatable illnesses, their parents convinced that faith alone would save them. "Stop them." Dr. Martinez was screaming, but the hospital staff seemed paralyzed by the scene unfolding before them. The singing grew louder, as the group moved into the hallway, my son's pale face disappearing among the forest of true believers. I had 2 weeks to save my son's life. 2 weeks before the cancer would become untreatable. 2 weeks to choose between respecting my wife's religious beliefs and watching my child die. The hymn faded down the corridor, as I stood in the empty hospital room, the disconnected IV dripping onto the floor like tears. The first 48 hours were a blur of police reports, emergency court filings, and unanswered calls to Sarah's phone. Pastor David's compound, ironically named Heaven's Gate Healing Center, sat on 20 acres of private property, just outside city limits. The local police knew it well. They'd tried and failed to investigate the deaths that had occurred there. Religious freedom laws protect them, Officer Jensen explained, his face grim. Unless we have clear evidence of immediate danger, we can't enter the property without a warrant. My son will die without his treatment, I said, pushing Nathan's medical files across the desk. Isn't that clear enough evidence? He sighed, looking at the photos of Nathan's smiling face paper-clipped to his medical charts. Your wife is his legal guardian too. She's claiming alternative medical care, through spiritual healing. It complicates things. I spent that night in Nathan's empty hospital room, staring at his favorite Spider-Man blanket still crumpled on the bed. Dr. Martinez had kept his room reserved, hoping. Michael, she said, entering with a stack of papers. I've documented everything, Nathan. Nathan's treatment plan, his progress, the projected outcome without intervention. The judge needs to understand what's at stake. My lawyer Daniel arrived early the next morning. We're filing for emergency custody and a court order to resume treatment, he explained. But Pastor David has powerful connections. He's beaten similar cases before. How? I demanded. How does he keep getting away with this? He's careful. Documents everything as spiritual counseling and alternative healing, has parents sign waivers. Plus his followers never testify against him, including your wife. Sarah's text finally came on the third day. Nathan is receiving God's healing. His faith is stronger without your doubt. Please respect our choice. I texted back, let me see him. Please. Hours later, a video arrived. Nathan lay on a bed, looking weaker than when I'd last seen him. Pastor David's followers surrounded him, hands raised, praying loudly. Sarah's voice rose above the others. Lord, cast out the cancer like you cast out demons. Nathan's eyes were open, searching the faces around him. Even through the video, I could see his fear. Your son needs you to be strong, Dr. Martinez said, when I showed her the video. Without treatment, the cancer will spread rapidly. We're already losing precious time. The emergency hearing was set for day 5. I arrived at the courthouse to find Pastor David's followers filling the halls, all wearing white, all singing hymns. Sarah stood among them, but Nathan wasn't there. Where is he? I asked her. Safe, she replied, not meeting my eyes. Receiving real healing. Inside the courtroom, my lawyer presented the medical evidence. Martinez testified about Nathan's prognosis. 90% survival rate with treatment, nearly 0 without it. She explained how critical these early days of treatment were, how every hour without chemotherapy gave the cancer more strength. Then Pastor David took the stand. We have documented cases of divine healing, he said smoothly, presenting folders to the judge. Members of our congregation, who were cured through faith alone. The Lord's power is beyond human understanding. And the children who died in your care? Daniel asked sharply. Objection. Pastor David's lawyer jumped up. Those cases were settled. No criminal charges were filed. The judge, an elderly man with tired eyes, reviewed the papers before him. While I respect religious freedom, he began, the child's medical needs. Your Honor, a court clerk rushed in with a paper. The defendant has filed a counter motion, claiming religious persecution. My heart sank. I knew what this meant. More delays, more hearings, more precious time lost. We'll reconvene in 48 hours, the judge announced. In the meantime, I strongly encourage both parties to find a compromise. Outside the courtroom, Sarah approached me, Pastor David hovering behind her. We can end this, Michael, she said softly. Join us at the compound. See Nathan's healing for yourself. Your doubt is the only thing blocking God's miracle. I looked at my wife. The woman I'd loved for 10 years, now a stranger consumed by her father's influence. Behind her, Pastor David smiled, that serene, knowing smile. How many more children have to die? I asked him directly. How many families will you destroy? His smile didn't waver. The Lord works in mysterious ways, he said. Some are chosen for healing, others for a higher purpose. I felt sick. Nathan wasn't a higher purpose. He was my 7-year-old son, who loved Spider-Man and chocolate ice cream, and still needed his nightlight. And he was running out of time. As Sarah turned to leave with her father, she paused. Nathan asks about you, she whispered. He's in pain. Dad says that's the evil leaving his body. For the first time, I heard doubt in her voice. But before I could respond, Pastor David placed his hand on her shoulder, leading her away. 7 days had passed. Nathan had 7 days left. On day 8, I received another video. Nathan lay curled on his side, his skin yellow, his breathing labored. The room was full of people praying, but all I could see was my son dying. The evil is almost gone, Sarah's voice narrated. Dad says his transformation is near. Transformation, the word hit me like a punch. I rushed to Daniel's office with the video. Listen to her voice, I insisted. She's scared. And look at Nathan, that's not healing, that's liver failure. Daniel replayed the video, his expression darkening. This might be what we need. If we can prove they're ignoring obvious medical distress. He made some calls. Within hours, Dr. Martinez had reviewed the footage and written an emergency affidavit. The judge agreed to move our hearing up. But when we arrived at court the next morning, Pastor David was ready. He'd brought a faith healer from his congregation, a doctor who'd surrendered his medical license to pursue God's true healing. The child is undergoing a spiritual detoxification, the ex-doctor testified. What appears to be illness is actually the body purging itself of worldly medicines. I wanted to scream. Nathan didn't need detoxification, he needed his chemotherapy. Then something unexpected happened. Sarah's sister Emma, who'd been silent throughout this ordeal, stepped into the courtroom. Pastor David's face tightened as she walked to the witness stand. My father's healing center killed my daughter, Emma began, her voice shaking. 3 years ago, she had diabetes. Dad convinced me insulin was against God's will. She died in pain, believing her faith wasn't strong enough to save her. I can't watch another child die. The courtroom erupted. Pastor David's followers began shouting, but Emma continued, pulling out her phone. I've been secretly recording inside the compound, she said. Nathan isn't being healed. He's being tortured. And Sarah knows it. The video played, Nathan crying in pain, Sarah begging her father to give him something for the pain. Pastor David refusing. Pain is weakness leaving the body. The judge had seen enough. He immediately issued an emergency order authorizing law enforcement to retrieve Nathan and resume medical treatment. But when the police reached Heaven's Gate, Nathan and Sarah were gone. Dad took them. Emma said when I called her, he has a backup facility. He always does this when he's about to lose. I was losing hope when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Storage facility on Route 16. Unit 247. Hurry. It was from Sarah. I called the police, but I didn't wait. I drove there at breakneck speed, finding the storage facility exactly where she said. Unit 247's door was slightly open. Inside, Sarah sat on a bare mattress, cradling Nathan. Pastor David stood over them, Bible raised, but something had changed. The serene smile was gone, replaced by desperate anger. You dare defy God's will, he shouted at Sarah. Your faith is weak, just like your sister's. Nathan is dying. Sarah sobbed. This isn't God's will, it's yours. I won't watch my son die, for your beliefs. I stepped inside. Pastor David spun toward me, but before he could speak, police sirens filled the air. It's over, I said quietly. Let him go. The next hours were a blur. Nathan was rushed to the hospital, Sarah giving consent for treatment to resume immediately. Dr. Martinez worked through the night to stabilize him. We've lost valuable time, she warned us. The cancer has spread, but we haven't lost the war yet. Sarah didn't leave Nathan's bedside, her father's Bible replaced by medical journals, as she learned everything she could about his treatment. Pastor David was arrested, attempting to flee the state. Emma's videos had revealed more than just Nathan's story. Weeks turned into months. Nathan's road back was harder than before, the cancer having gained ground during the interruption. But slowly, steadily, he began to improve. Daddy, he asked me one night, his Spider-Man blanket back on his hospital bed, is Mommy still mad at me for not having enough faith? Sarah, who'd been reading in the corner, rushed to his side. No, baby, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm the one who didn't have enough faith. Faith in medicine, in science, in the amazing doctors helping you. I let fear and false promises blind me. Can you forgive me? Nathan reached for both our hands, bringing them together over his hospital bed. Can we just be a family again? He asked. Sarah squeezed my hand, and I squeezed back. The road ahead would be long. Nathan's recovery, Sarah's healing from her father's influence, our marriage rebuilding from the foundation up. But we would walk it together. 6 months later, Nathan's cancer was in remission. Pastor David's compound was closed. His followers scattered as more stories emerged. Emma started a support group for families healing from religious medical abuse. And on Nathan's 8th birthday, celebrated in the hospital garden, Sarah gave him a new Bible, one that read on the cover, "Faith can move mountains, but sometimes God sends doctors to help us climb them."